He understands the value of his presence among us and the importance of the leadership which he provides. As a lawyer and a member of parliament, he has committed himself to service to the nation, and it certainly helps that this conviction is in keeping with his religious beliefs. He is best placed to tell all of us about the upcoming conference, the important partnerships which have been struck for its execution, and the expectations for its outcome. And I therefore invite him to address us. Minister?
My role here is very simple. As you are all aware, the Diaspora Conference, actually the fifth installment, comes up June 16 to 19. And what we are doing this time around is different from any previous conferences that we have had. Because this is the first time in the history of these conferences that the Minister of State, the Minister of Responsibility, is actually in the diaspora, engaging members of the diaspora and promoting this conference. And it is not by accident or happenstance. It is because we intend for this conference to be a watershed conference in the movement of the Jamaican diaspora. And where I like to start out in these engagements is to speak a little bit about the diaspora movement, because I think that there is a need for persons to understand what this movement is about, and to make the case that the diaspora movement is not unique to Jamaica. The Israelis, the Indians, Chinese, the Mexicans, the Irish, all have diaspora organizations, and they have been able to leverage those organizations to bring about development, both at the national and at the international level. And when I became Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade in January of 2012, I had the pleasure of traveling to Israel in June of that year to an inaugural diaspora conference. And that was hosted by the Israeli government, because they felt that they had best practices, knowledge that they could share with other diaspora movements across the globe, having had a successful experience. And the other thing that they found is that there is no competition about or amongst diasporas, quite frankly, because you are either a member of the Jamaican diaspora, or you're a member of the Chinese diaspora, or you're a member of the Irish diaspora. Well, you know, people who have dual citizens might be members of more than one diaspora, right? So we might have some Canadians and Jamaican diasporas here. But the important point, though, is that the experience of Israel and other diasporas that I will make brief reference to demonstrates that there is power in the partnership, and that there is the power of transformation in the partnership. And one of the important things that I observed at the conference in Israel is that Jamaica has all the elements to make this movement and this partnership transformative. It has all the elements to unlock development, both in terms of Jamaica itself and in respect of the diaspora communities where they are. Because every element of the toolkit that the Israelis and other members of the diaspora outlined, Jamaica had all of them. So my view is that we now have to use and maximize those toolkits to the best of our abilities and to the best of our energies and efforts, and I think that is really and very possible. I also like to make the point that, you know, we live in a global environment, a global world, and therefore migration is not a new phenomenon where globalization is concerned. And even though the term globalization may be of some recent vintage, the fact is the world has been globalized a very long time. And in the context of Jamaica, most, if not all, Jamaicans are migrants and migratory, and that is really a statement of fact, because the original people, the Tainos, were wiped out by those persons who were lost and ended up on the shores of Jamaica, right? And the fact is that we all came to the shores of Jamaica, many of us, unwillingly. We came there involuntarily. Many of us came there, depending on which descendant you are from. And since the establishment of Jamaica, and even prior to Jamaica gaining independence, Jamaicans have been migratory, and there are periods and waves of migration. If we go to the 1920s, there was the wave that went to the Panama Canal with the construction of the Panama Canal. And when you go to the museum in Panama, you will see walls that chronologically outline the Jamaicans who contributed to the construction of the Panama Canal. There were waves in the 1950s, in the post-World War period, when waves of Jamaicans went to the United Kingdom to reconstruct and help in the reconstruction of the United Kingdom. 1980s, there were waves again. Many persons left the 70s, the 80s. Many persons came to the United States. Many persons came to Canada in that period, and it continues. As a matter of fact, one of the interesting elements is that Jamaicans have been coming to Canada from the 1800s. Because the first set that came here were Maroons, who were deported to Canada for the trouble that they were given in Jamaica. So that their good, for their good work, they were sent into these cold climes to cool out. But I doubt they did any such thing, right, when they got here. And it's interesting because, I like to make the point, and I must tell you, I must confess, that the first tour of duty that I had was here, actually, in Toronto. So I'm back. This is my second installment, right? And what's interesting, as I say to people, even if you take into account the national dish, it is part Canadian and it's part African. Because we don't have codfish or saltfish in Jamaica. It comes from Nova Scotia, from Canada, right? And the ackee comes from wherever in West Africa that it comes from. So there's a natural synergy, in my view, between Canada and Jamaica. And again, a little piece of trivia. The second wife, I think, of one of your first prime ministers was Jamaican, right? So the ties go way back, and we celebrate 50 years of diplomatic engagement in relation to Jamaica and Canada upon achieving independence. But I make this point because it's important to understand that the appreciation of migration has shifted and it has changed. And one of the things that I like to indicate to people is that Jamaica observes and recognizes dual citizenship, and people should feel free to embrace the citizenship of where they have settled, because it doesn't make you any less Jamaican. So you're 100% Jamaican and you're 100% Canadian, and you're welcome to return to Jamaica anytime you're ready. And all you have to do when you get to the airport, make sure you whip out your Jamaican passport and put on your best Jamaican accent. So the issue of migration is important, and in this context, Jamaica is currently in the process of implementing the International Migration and Development Policy. And we are also working on the Diaspora and Development Policy, and there are 5 other sub-areas that we'll be working on. And in the conference, this is one of the features of the conference that is going to make it a watershed conference, because the persons who are in attendance at the conference will have an opportunity to engage in policy discussions as to what constitutes development, the role of the diaspora in that development process, and the mechanisms that we need to put in place to unlock the development agenda. And if you notice, I did not use the descriptor national development. I said development, because a developed Jamaican will translate into a developed Jamaica. And we want to ensure that Jamaicans are developed to their fullest potential. And why is it so? Very simple. There are an estimated 3.3 million Jamaicans living in the world. Well, sorry, living outside of Jamaica. There are 2.7 that live in Jamaica according to the latest census. And if your maths is any good, and you add 3.3 and 2.7, you get about 6 million Jamaicans worldwide. And that is felt to be a conservative figure. So if you thought that Jamaicans had Holy Ghost quality, it's not really that. They have that too. But it's the fact that there are about 6 million Jamaicans around the world. So it means anywhere you go, you're going to find a Jamaican. Right? Remember, the Holy Ghost is everywhere. Right? So the fact is that when you think of a population not as 2.7 million, but 6 or 7 million people, it then tells you that you have a tremendous resource that you can tap into. What has happened is that we have to now develop the structures to get Jamaicans everywhere to coalesce around a developmental agenda, and that agenda will impact positively on all Jamaicans. And that is one of the things that we are seeking to do at this conference, and I believe that we are well on our way to establishing that. Now, I also want to just share with you the fact that in the area of tourism, and to give you an example, 11 to 15% of the tourists that visit Jamaica are Jamaicans or of Jamaican origin. And the research demonstrates that they spend far more than non-Jamaican tourists. And that is not an argument that we don't want any other tourists or any other visitors to Jamaica. All of them are welcome, and certainly in the context of Canada. Canada is second only to the United States in terms of visitor arrival on the island. But obviously, if there is 3.3 million persons living outside of Jamaica, we are only getting 11 to 15% of them. It means that if we were to increase the promotion to the Jamaican segment, you can get even upwards of 50% of Jamaicans returning to Jamaica, spending time in Jamaica. And the fact is that they not only go to hotels, they go outside, they go back to their communities, and they get involved in other activities, and that is of significant note. Now, I want to make this point as well, that when I was in California, I used the example of the Indian diaspora, and this is a level of transformation that I'm speaking about. The Silicon Valley in California, in large measure, was created by the input of Indians who went to the United States, studied there, and they built the backbone of that valley. They thought to themselves that if they could do this here, then they could replicate it in India. And they went back to India and they did the same thing. And they are the reason why the Indian economy is moving at the pace that it is moving and producing as much middle class persons as it is producing now. A similar experience with Ireland. Ireland had many of the similarities to Jamaica, many of the challenges similar to Jamaica, and they appealed to their diaspora, and their diaspora responded. And rather than being an area where persons were leaving, many of the diaspora relocated to Ireland. And even in the second round, that they are having some difficulties they again reached out to their diaspora communities. So part of the objective of the conference is to sort of change the dialogue and the understanding of this homeland diaspora partnership amongst the members of the Jamaican community, both overseas and at home, and to look very seriously at the win-win proposition that it presents and the value proposition that it presents. And I know that many members in the diaspora are usually of the view that there is one-way traffic, and this is primarily as a result of the remittances, and I BMDS and all this might get a little bit nervous here now, right? But there's no need for nervousness. The fact is that the Jamaican diaspora remits to Jamaica $2 billion annually. But I like to make the point to members of the diaspora community when I speak to them. Not 1 cent, not 1 farthing of that flows into the consolidated fund. It does not come to the government of Jamaica. And if there's any distinction between the Israeli diaspora, the Indian diaspora, the Irish diaspora, is that in terms of the partnership and in terms of the flow of resources, those resources are state directed. That's not an argument that the Jamaican state wants to put its hand on remittances or such thing, right? So you can relax. That's not my argument. But the distinction between those diasporas and the transformation that has taken place in those countries is because of the nature of those partnerships in those diaspora entities. So my question that I pose is, how can we leverage and unlock this development? And I know for a fact that there's not many members of the diaspora who are prepared to route their money to the government of Jamaica. That's a matter of fact, right? That's not fiction. So how do we then get across this bridge? And in my view, we get across this chasm through investment and trade, because that is a win-win proposition. You invest your money and you will get a return on your money. You will make a profit on your money. And this now is the punch of this thing, right? So let me get to it. When you think of Jamaica, and Robert is here, and you think in terms of investment, Jamaica has a very solid performance in terms of foreign direct investment. Between the period of 2003, 2007, 1997 to 2003, you had over $720 million flowing into the country from foreign direct investment. And up to 2008, just before the onset of the global financial downturn, there was $1.8 billion that flowed into the country in terms of foreign direct investment. When you think of infrastructure, the French have invested heavily in our highways. When you think of infrastructure, the Dutch have invested heavily in our highways. The Koreans have invested heavily in our highways. The Chinese are now investing heavily in our highways because they expect the expansion and extension of Highway 2000 westward out of St. Catherine to Manchester is being undertaken by the Chinese. A link is now being constructed as we speak between Ocherios and I see my signal about 1 minute over there that distract. In between Ocherios and Kingston is being done by the Chinese. In hotels, the Spanish Armada has come, and if you go along the north coast, there are many hotels that are there invested by the Spanish, and this time they have brought their money and they are not lost. We're inviting them. So the point I'm making is this, is that there are other entities that have invested heavily in Jamaica. However, when you look and you analyze, there's not a direct correlation between the rate of growth and the level of foreign direct investment. And that is because the absorptive capacity of the country is shallow. It means that the people at the middle tier who could provide services, whether it is food, entertainment, and other attendance services to these various are not as robust as they could be. And I believe that this is the area that members of the Jamaican diaspora are able to capitalize on and to invest in the country. And it has already begun to happen. So this is not a wishful thinking. In London, when I was in Birmingham, I'm going to go over time, my dear, right? When I was in Birmingham for the launch, we met a Jamaican who had invested in Jamaica. And in addition to her investment in Jamaica, she actually won $100,000 from the Hillary Clinton global initiative in terms of diaspora entrepreneurship. And the JAMPRO representative in London presented me with 3 pages of Jamaicans in the diaspora who have in fact invested in Jamaica. And let me tell you, Jamaica turns people into multi-millionaires, including Jamaicans. If I should ask any of you here who know Dennis O'Brien, probably many of you don't. But if I should ask you who know Digicel, everybody will put up their hand and tell me that they know Digicel. Digicel became a global brand by investing in Jamaica. And as a result of it, they have now built their corporate headquarters in downtown Kingston. Right? And I'm saying that if they can do it, Jamaicans can do it. And it does not matter the size of the investment. And one of the things that we're doing, and you know, where I keep referring to JAMPRO here, because they are a critical linchpin in this process. And despite some of the criticisms that JAMPRO may come in for, JAMPRO is one of the world leading promotion agencies anywhere, right, for small states. And I think that they are now becoming attuned and sensitive to the peculiarities and the needs of members of the diaspora seeking to invest in the country. So I have come here with one simple message, that despite all the challenges that Jamaica may have, that it provides a value proposition for persons who are enterprising, and that whilst Jamaicans may be somewhat reticent about Jamaica, there are other people who are beating down the door to come into Jamaica, to invest in Jamaica, and are making a mint based on that investment. I think it is time for Jamaicans to step forward and make that investment. What it will do is that it will not only unlock the potential of the country, but it will unlock the potential of Jamaicans everywhere. And I want to use the example of Patrick Castle as one. He came back to Jamaica, and he came back in the context of the opening up of the telecommunications environment, right? And I like to say this, that Jamaica is one of the more robust and diverse telecoms infrastructure you can find anywhere in the world. And if the island is hit by a category 5 hurricane, within seconds the networks rebound and are up, and you can reach anybody inside here, right? We have some best practices that we can take to other places in terms of disaster risk management and all of that. But I make that point to indicate that because of the nature of the telecoms, Castle was able to come in to start the business process outsourcing contact centers business in Jamaica, and brought in Fortune 500 companies, General Electric, Xerox. He sold out to Xerox for multiples of millions of US dollars. And there are other stories that I could go into to demonstrate the power of investing in Jamaica. Right now there are 2 licenses that are being auctioned in the telecom sector, particularly targeting persons who are interested in data. And these bands send out signals very far farther than the current signals that are there now. And if there are persons who are interested in that area, that is there. As I wind down, because I'm over my 20 minutes, I will just highlight some of the areas that opportunities are presenting themselves, and for members of the Jamaican diaspora to think very carefully about the prospects of investing in Jamaica. And let me just say to you, the fact of the matter is that when Jamaicans invest in Jamaica, we retain more of the spend in the country. Because one of the issues that happens with the free movement of capital, people come in, they invest, they make their monies, and they repatriate their profit. Jamaicans are likely to keep their profit in the country, and it will percolate and absorb at a wider level. And again, those are established facts, not fiction. Jamaica is embarking on the position in Jamaica as a logistic hub, and many of you might have heard this. This is the single largest initiative of the government of Jamaica. So similar to the ports in Singapore, the ports in Dubai, Jamaica is actually positioning itself to take advantage of the expansion of the Panama Canal, which is due to happen in 2015, and the resources have already been programmed in the budget to begin this work. This will see the transformation of Jamaica as a air, sea, land and rail port destination, and it has significant implications in terms of the wealth creation and job creation. There are opportunities in energy, particular persons who are involved in alternative energy. This is another area that you can get involved in. Agriculture is another main area. Embarrassingly, Jamaica has a food import bill of $1 billion US. That's half of the remittances that are coming into the country, right? And we believe that this can be reduced by $500 million US. And if you simply do the maths, 500 million US is nothing to sneeze at, right? So persons who are enterprising and want to use technology, whether it's hydroponics or greenhouse technology, to get into the agricultural sector, now is the time to do that. I mentioned tourism already. You have part of the persons who have invested out of the UK in Jamaica, facilitated by Jampro, are persons who have actually put up guest houses, 10, 20 bedroom, 40 bedrooms. There are incentives for that. I spoke to ICT, that's another critical area of investment. Right now the government of Jamaica is seeking to build out 300,000 square feet of space. And let me tell you something, Jamaica is an extremely attractive destination for offshore or nearshore outsourcing. We can't build enough space for the take-up of these entities. And this is an area that persons who have the wherewithal can become invested in. And in traditional areas such as education and healthcare, there is a lot of space there. And I want to take this opportunity in congratulating and celebrating the diaspora movement, because the diaspora movement has really been a rock in relation to these two areas, education and health. This morning I had the opportunity to tour the Sunnybrook Hospital, and certainly there is work that is going on there that will see the health sector benefiting tremendously from that engagement. I also toured a hospital in Los Angeles prior to coming here, and again the diaspora is working to improve the health system. The structure is very, very developed. We have liaison persons in hospitals across Jamaica who feed information into the various organizations about the needs. So there's an alignment of needs and supply, and that will see the transformation of the health system in a very short period of time. Similarly, in the area of education, I know that PACE does significant work in Jamaica in that regard. The alumni associations are also very important in that respect. But even in these social philanthropic initiatives, there is the prospect of making a surplus, if you don't want to call it a profit, right? And you may ask the question, how? And it's very simple. In the context of education, the government of Jamaica is seeking to phase out the shift system, and that is going to require the build out of 100,000 school spaces. And if each school can accommodate 1,200 persons, it therefore means that you're going to need, those of you who can do maths, probably close to 100 schools, right? The government is prepared to lease buildings that are built from any entrepreneur, and at the end of the day, purchase the building or purchase the facility, right? I'm fortunate that in my constituency we're building a school now for $660 million, right? So it is the first of the 100 that we have to build. But that is an area where persons can actually concentrate their minds and make a return on that investment. Even in the area of health, there are possibilities. There are at least two projects that Jamaicans are partnering to bring to Jamaica in terms of healthcare. One is a 200 million hospital in Montego Bay, and there is plan to bring another facility in the Portmore area, and those things are well advanced. So even in these traditional areas, there is the prospect of making some money on your effort, and these monies can then now be plowed into greater reach, and it will solve much of the challenges that I know many organizations might have in terms of fundraising, because you can make a return on these social investments. So as I am about to take my seat now, having expired my 20 minutes and gone over probably by 10, I'm just here to say to you very, very, very clearly that Jamaica is open for business, that the Jamaican government believes that there are persons, and certainly everywhere I have gone, every stop I have made, I have encountered Jamaicans who have indicated their desire to invest in Jamaica in a tangible way. And what I'm saying to the Jamaican community, that whilst we may be tentative about taking the plunge, there are others that are beating a quick pace to Jamaica to invest in Jamaica. You don't want to have the situation that when you come back home and you go to the airport, you think that Pato could get you in and you have to be talking Mandarin.